Good evening. I guess it's 6:30. Let's see who we have.
How are you, Mr. Witherwax?
Good, Miss Tyus. How are you?
By the grace of God, thank you.
May we never have to ask her anything more. Great. Hold on.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Is that Miss Granville? Good turnout. All right. It is 6:34. We have, I think, a quorum. Let me call the roll just to confirm that. A moment. Desmond Atkins. Julia Boyd. Michael Francoeur might be running late. Alan Gerber. Karen Gray.
Rent. Now, you were subletting an apartment from them?
Saskia Hagans.
Present.
Thank you. Igenie Harris Blenman. Colin Jakubczyk.
Present.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Present.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Present.
Thank you. Regina Kinsey. Peter Crashes. Francis Langley.
Yeah.
Thank you. William Meehan. Fior Ortiz Joyner.
Present.
Thank you. Celeste Stern.
Present.
Thank you. Carrie Tan. Nicole Tetreault.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Thurton.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ethel Tias.
Present.
I know you're here. Thank you. Irsa Weatherspoon. Robert Witherwax present. Deborah Young.
Present.
Thank you. That is 12. We have a quorum.
Also, this is Peter Crashes. Apologies, I missed him.
No problem, Peter. I was going to come back because I saw your
Okay.
your name there. Just
Yeah,
want to
thanks.
confirm.
I got
Hi, Rob. It's
I was
William
on
Meehan.
early.
I also just joined.
William, thank you. We've got a phone number here ending in 11347 We have a few other guests. We have Cheryl Walcott. We have Najani Granville. Thank you for joining us. We have May from Council Member Osei's office. Thank you for joining us. All right, the agenda for tonight. We have 4 items of business. We have the bus matter. We have the sanitation composting letter matter. We have the streets and transits draft legislation question, and then we have to start the ball rolling on some new business with budget priorities for the next fiscal year. We also might have commentary from people about Accessoride. One of our members said she would like some time for new business to talk about that. So if they show, we will certainly give them some time on that. Excuse me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Robert Witherwax. I am the chair of Community Board 8's Environment, Sanitation, and Transportation Committee. I'm joined by Mark Thurton, the co-chair of the committee, and several other members of the board and of the committee. So thank you all for joining. Our first item is the Brooklyn bus redesign commentary. And like I said, in my email to the committee, I want to thank the, certainly, I think a dozen may underestimate it, but the dozen members of this committee who have weighed in on the bus question in granular detail or in large, big scale commentary, doesn't matter. Your thoughts and comments have been heard by the committee and reflected. I also want to thank the many members of the public at large. And I see Gail's here, so I want to thank Gail again for giving us a forum at her committee, Gail Branch Mohammed's Seniors Aging Committee, to bring the word about these bus changes out to the public. So thank you again for that. This is only the draft plan. The way this is going to go out is the draft plan has been dropped. We're going to submit commentary for the draft plan. They're taking commentary through probably the end of the spring. New York City Transit is then going to put out a final proposed plan at some point over the summer, maybe the fall. I don't know how fast they're going to do it. And then we're going to have another opportunity for comment at that time. So we're going to get 2 bites at this apple. So that's great. But, you know, if you don't speak up, you don't make your thoughts known, you lose your chance at it. So, but this is only the draft plan. So we framed our comments, I think, in a helpful tone. We acknowledge the complexity of the project. We acknowledge a lot of unintended consequences of the changes and of keeping things as they are. And I think we point out some shortfalls and some things we'd like to have included in whatever the final plan may be. And nothing that we say precludes anyone else from making their own independent comments. And I encourage everyone on this call to make your own independent comments. But the point is that we have an obligation on this board to speak for the community, and especially those members of the community who may not have had an opportunity to make their own comments. So the goal for tonight is to review and hopefully adopt the resolution, which was circulated to the committee members last week. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Does anyone want to? Again, the committee has all had the resolution. I asked for comments by noon today. I got none. So I'm presuming everyone has read it, and it's fine. The goal again is to adopt the resolution tonight, and then we'll pass it on to the full board for its consideration in March. So can I get a motion from someone?
I'm not prepared to make a motion. I'm on the list of shame. I think I missed reading it. I would like to ask, the motion maybe I'd make is that could we move this down the agenda, and those of us who are able to read it, I'm sorry, mea culpa, shame on me and all of the above, but I totally missed the resolution that was submitted, so. And I'm assuming that if there was no comments, that maybe I'm not the only one that missed it.
I will actually raise a motion to adopt the bus redesign draft statement this meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Young. Thank you, Mr. Meehan. Look, this is the third time I've sent the draft out, and it's changed a lot from draft to draft. So I'm not going to ask to poll the members whether they've read it or not, but it's certainly not been hidden. I'm happy to read it into the record tonight, but I really do think that what we've talked about is we want to get our comments heard. And if we miss this month, then we're going to not get to in front of the full board before April. And then we're probably well into the time when New York City Transit is considering all their comments. So I don't want to miss our window.
I'm not proposing that we delay it. I was just asking if we could move it down on the agenda, and I'm going to read it while y'all are doing. I'm sorry. And I do apologize.
Thank you, Ms. Young. I misunderstood you.
No, I
thought you were
wasn't
suggesting-
asking not to do it this evening. I just asked if we could move it down on the agenda. That was all. And I'll just have to go with the consensus because I was negligent. I didn't read it, and I'm owning up to that.
Thank you. Very fair. Mr. Meehan, is that fine if we table it for an agenda item or two?
Yeah, totally. I just didn't want us to, have to miss another month where the MTA could address our concerns.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think we need to dispose of it tonight. I don't want to, wordsmith it to death tonight, but I'm happy to give people time to review it. If you have it, it should be attached to the last email from me to the CB8 Live Streets Google group. But let's move on down to another document that was in the same document. So this is the composting letter. So this has kind of a funny history to it, right? We wrote a letter that the subcommittee on environment and sanitation considered it, I think, back in November. We borrowed some language from one of our constituents, the PHNDC, and every time we drafted it, sanitation turned around and gave us something we had asked for in the letter. So it was almost like, well, why don't we ask for $1 million? And maybe sanitation will give us $1 million. Well, it didn't happen. But here, the letter basically now says, thank you for the smart compost bin. We hope you can come out and assist our community with some educational opportunities and explain the program a little more. Then thank you for the expansion of curbside compost collection, the brown bins. We await that coming out in the fall of 2023. And thirdly, we hope that sanitation will continue to support composting operations at local community gardens and by and large just support composting. So the text of the letter is in the packet. I'll take any questions on it at this time.
Robert?
Yes, Gail.
Yes. Is there any handouts or anything that they have sent to the board for us to distribute?
You know what? No, sanitation, no, not that they have sent yet.
Okay, so again, and I think from the meeting that we had with sanitation, a full board meeting, they said that the compost bins are out, but they did not send any information about how it was to be used. So the information
Correct.
comes out after, okay. So are we requesting that they get that out to us ASAP?
So yes, the first draft of the letter said, "Hey, we're aware of this pilot program. Can we be considered to be part of it?" And then suddenly we were part of it without even asking.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been kind of dropped on us, and we want to learn more. We're inviting them to attend a meeting to educate and inform the residents about this program and to explain the metrics for success.
Thank you.
Among the questions that were raised when Ms. Cunningham came to the full board meeting was, well, how did they determine locations, right? And how fungible are locations? And if this is something that is, if we want more of them, is that possible? Do we have a finite number? There's a lot of questions about that we need answered. So yeah, we've asked for somebody to come out. Ms. Stern, I see your hand.
I guess at the meeting when they come out, they can address how often they're being serviced or emptied. I think Alan asked that question after he discovered all the ones in his neighborhood were full. Is that the idea at the meeting to ask them about how often?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one on the corner of Classen and Park, which shows on the app as generally being available, and then you go there and it is not. And I had this unfortunate experience last weekend. I was trying to compost, and everything closer to me was full, and it shows on the app that it was available. But then you walk there, and I don't know if anyone can see that picture, but yeah, it was covered in garbage. So if the bin is full, come back later is right now the way we're reading it. But we'd love to hear what Department of Sanitation says about either non-functioning bins or about the frequency of collection. It seems to be pretty much nightly, which is fascinating. So we'll see how it goes. Any other questions?
I just think we have to ask it. I'm sorry, this is Karen Gray.
That's right.
What we have to do is really ask in general is that the neighborhood must be informed before you do stuff like this. Because one morning I woke up and walked around the corner on the hill and saw the bin, and I was like, interesting. I just passed there yesterday, that bin wasn't there. So I think that they will get more input and more, understanding if they do stuff like that. I think we have to really continue repeating this to all of our city agencies.
I think that's an excellent point, and it's this was among the more pleasant surprises, but it was a surprise nonetheless, and there was no reason for it to be a surprise. No reason. All right, so back to the letter.
Mr. Willowwax, before you go further.
Who's that? I'm sorry. Yes, Miss Langley.
The app. How do as seniors get the app?
That's a good question. As far as I understand, and this is again one of those questions like those other ones that we want to find out about from sanitation. And by the way, I'm going to put all this in the letter. This is all good stuff. It's going to go into the draft of the letter. The frequency of the collections, the addressing the broken bins, and then for those who don't have a smartphone, what's the sanitation department's expectation for those in our community who don't have one? My off the cuff answer, because I don't know any better answer, is find a friend who has one. It's a great addition to the community, and I'd love for everyone to be able to use it. But I don't have a good answer for you at the moment, but that's certainly something we will ask them. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Miss Jordan. They stopped doing the individual composting. They used to give out the small brown bins.
That's coming in October.
Oh,
So they rolled it out. Community Board 6 had it, Community Board 2 had it, and then they had it where you could opt in for a bit, and then they suspended it. And now they just announced last month that borough-wide in October, all community boards will be on the program, and homeowners can choose to opt in and have a brown bin out front and have it collect their own compost. So that's one solution to Miss Langley's comment. Well, how do I compost? Maybe you don't use the curbside smart bins. I'm sorry, the corner smart bins. You end up using one of the curbside brown bins. But we'll have a lot of education needs for the community when that happens too. Any other questions, Mr. Thurton?
Yes, with the app, I'm also curious, why is the app needed? I mean, is it for tracking purposes, or is it only to get access to it?
So, Mr. Thurton, it's to prevent people from just dumping trash in there, because without any deterrent, people will just dump whatever they're holding in there. That's the idea.
I think the app too signals how many people have used it and gives them some indication of how full each individual one is. So they're collecting that information so they know a certain amount of opens. I believe that the sanitation representative said something about that at the last meeting, if that's helpful as well.
I think you're right, Mr. Tro. And Mr. Meehan, I think that also is true. I actually walked past one of these to Ms. Gray's comment down by my office in the financial district. Suddenly there was a compost bin where there hadn't been one before. You needed an app to open it, but then it was like a slot machine. You had to grab an arm and pull the arm to open the bins. I was like, okay, that's two methods of security. You need to electronically open it, and then you actually have to yank this thing. So I think that's the point. But again, Mark, these are good questions. These bins were dropped on us and we don't have definitive answers. But security and tracking of use are definitely two. I mean, how do they know whether a bin is full or not? Are there weight sensors in it? I don't know, but the app will show that a bin is full. And it's got to be tracked on something. It's either the weight of the compost or there's something that measures the height. But to Ms. Tetro's point, maybe it's just opens, right? After 30 opens, the bin's going to be full. Maybe it's a guess, who knows? So we'll find out. Any other questions on composting and on the compost letter? All right, can I get a motion to approve sending a letter that by and large is an improved draft of what was circulated?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that? I missed it. Ms. Gray, thank you.
Yeah.
Question in reference to the letter. We'll see the final draft before it's sent out?
Of course.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Atkins.
Wax, I'm sorry. Isn't it customary for the chair to recite the motion?
It is. Thank you, Ms. Tias. The motion is to support the draft letter that was circulated as improved by the comments taken at the open meeting to go to the Department of Sanitation concerning curbside composting programs.
And that motion is to support the
letter as amended.
And the letter says?
Letter was circulated. The letter says right now, on behalf of the Environment, Sanitation, and Transportation Committee of Brooklyn Community Board 8, we are writing concerning composting services in our district. First of all, many thanks for including Brooklyn CD8 in the expansion of the New York City Smart Compost Bin Program. This is an incredible addition to our community, and we extend an open invitation for DSNY to attend a meeting of our committee this spring to educate and inform our residents about this program and to explain the metrics for its success. Specifically, and here as well, I will insert the questions that were just asked. Secondly, We want to reiterate our support for an expansion of the residential curbside compost collection program. We eagerly await the planned service rollout for Brooklyn in the fall of 2023. We hope that the smart compost bins are meant to complement and not replace this service. Thirdly, we hope that DSNY and other city agencies will continue to support the composting operations at our local community gardens, which remain the most accessible option for people who have difficulty accessing the smartphone-dependent bins. Composting is an excellent way to reduce the amount of trash that ends up in landfills that disproportionately affect low-income community. Furthermore, keeping food waste out of household trash helps reduce rodent and other pest issues. Critically, composting is key in our fight against climate change, both by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and by making the ecosystem more resilient.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to call the roll now. Desmond Atkins, Julia Boyd, Michael Francoeur, Alan Gerber, Karen Gray,
Here.
you, Saskia Higgins, Jeannie Harris Blenman, Carolyn Jakubczyk.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Zuzima Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Regina Kinsey. Peter Crashes.
Yes.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Yes.
Thank you. William Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Fior Ortiz Joyner.
Yes.
Thank you. Celeste Stern.
Yes.
Thank you. Carrie Tan. Nicole Tetreault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Thurton.
Yes.
Thank you. Ethel Tyus.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Irsa Weatherspoon. Robert Witherwax, yes. Deborah Young.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 14 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions.
All right.
Um,
Rob, I was also in favor at some unmuting issues.
Thank you, Saskia. Gotcha. 15 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. Can we return to item A, the buses?
Yes.
Great. So to briefly summarize the points, to inform those who haven't had a chance to read it, one of our points, which again, Mr. Atkins, I'm sorry he's not here. This was one of his great contributions. Community Board 8 is a naturally occurring retirement center, NORC, right? And a home for families with school-age children, two demographic groups that ride the bus at a high rate. So buses are important to us. We wanted to just weigh in on sort of four categories: general matters, spacing and eliminated stops, rerouting, and missing elements, right? So with the general matters, we talked about headway. We wanted a maximum of 8 minutes on any line at any time, which we're not going to get because some lines overnight, it just doesn't make sense. Every bus should have transit signal priority, front-facing cameras, DOT, which is not New York City Transit, but as a basic element of all of this, DOT should install seating, lighting, active information, and shelter at every bus stop. In terms of spacing, we noted a few key points. Bus stops adjacent to important destinations like cultural centers, senior centers, schools, hospitals, grocery stores. We felt too many of the eliminations did not take those factors into account, specifically the Children's Museum. On our east-west running buses, we noted that some of the removals at each avenue, such as Classen, Bedford, Brooklyn, Troy, seemed just removing for the sake of removing. Those are long blocks, and we'd rather just keep the regular stops since they don't seem to be causing any problems. For rerouting, we talked about the one-seat ride to JFK. We talked about the elimination of the stop at the Children's Museum. We talked about the choke point on St. John's at the B45. We talked about the transit service that was going to be moved off of Dean and Bergen for the B65. For missing elements, we talked about the fact that it does not address the primary choke point on the B69 at Flatbush and 7th, and it does not restore any of the former B71 service, the Union Street Eastern Parkway line. So again, we're not trying to weigh in thumbs up, thumbs down on the plan as a whole. It was more, here are some thoughts that have risen to the surface in our community discussions that we hope will be helpful in formulating the second plan. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Weatherwax, this is Fiora Ortiz Joyner.
Yes, Fiora.
In number 3, and in the rerouting, the first bullet, I'm in agreement, but if I may, I would like to reiterate in that paragraph that we still would like northbound service on New York Avenue, whether it's whatever number, but we want a northbound bus on New York Avenue.
And that was the northbound bus in our district was going away?
No, it wasn't going away. It's currently the 43 on New York Avenue, but the
Gonna be the
redesign is now
49.
Brooklyn
49.
Avenue.
44.
Yeah, yeah.
44.
The 44, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So
You're right.
we just want to make mention of that, you know, I don't want that to get lost.
Okay.
Thank you.
Something that you forgot that I don't think we noted.
Yes,
When
Ms.
I attended the session, the MTA sessions, and we broke up into groups, they told us about the slowing down of service at 8 o'clock from 8 o'clock at night. And many of us in our room said to them, listen, there are people getting off of work. The Atlantic Center is still open at 8 o'clock at night. People are getting off work. Many of the stores don't close till 9, 10. The supermarket is still open. How can you start slowing down service when workers are going home and all of that? So that's another thing I think we need to look at because people are still coming home from work.
Sure, I think we can put that in on the very first bullet point. The best design network is pointless without frequent and reliable service, where we talk about maximum headway of 8 minutes on any line at any time. So I think that kind of falls under there.
Okay.
You know, don't slow the buses down just because it's an arbitrary time of day. Slow the buses down because, you know, you don't have the ridership there if you need to. Thank you. Any other questions? I see Ms. Mohammed and I see Mr. Mian.
Okay. Robert, I think it was mentioned, but I just would like more emphasis on the fact that there are so many senior centers. I think you mentioned in it that it affects our older population, but we have on the 43, 45 run, there are 3 senior centers or senior housing. And I would just like to see that emphasized more in the letter about how it would affect our seniors and within community board aid.
Yeah, no, thank you. So it's in our sort of preamble where we talk about the community is a home to seniors. It's also in bullet point number 2, the first bullet point, maintaining bus stops adjacent to important destinations such as cultural centers and senior centers. But we can certainly bring it in with some of the other points as well. So I will,
Right, and it's senior housing also.
Yep, senior centers, senior housing. Good point. Mr. Mian?
Thank you.
Yes, I
Thank
think
you.
we should add to point 1 a bullet point about that the MTA should institute all door boarding and proof of payment on all of its buses. You know, the buses are slowed down not only, forget by stops, the buses are slowed down ridiculously by having people queue at the front of the bus to dip their Metro cards. So, you know, they have the Omni readers at the back of the bus. You know, they can scan our cards and say, oh, you have a monthly. So they should, you know, to specifically call out all door boarding and proof of payment on all buses.
I think we can add that in with every bus should have transit signal priority, front facing cameras, all door boarding. You know, and the flip side of that is that it drives me nuts when people leave at the front of the bus. People are trying to get on. You should exit through the back, get on the front. Anyway, that was.
Do you know why they do that? Because many times, you know, the kneeling bus, if you have packages and you have heavy bags, that back door doesn't come down low.
No, it doesn't.
So that's why people run to the front.
Any other comments? Great. Mr. Meehan, you had a motion to support the memo. Does your motion still stand if we add in the four requests, which is preserving northbound New York Avenue bus, making sure that buses run at the hours that they're needed, making sure that buses go to senior housing and senior centers, and all door boarding and proof of payment?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a second for that?
I'll
I
second it.
second. Ms.
I
Langley.
heard Ms. Langley second. Thank you very much. Any questions on the motion? All right, I will call the roll. Desmond Atkins, Julia Boyd, Michael Francoeur, Alan Gerber, Karen Gray.
Yeah.
Thank you. Saskia Hagens.
Yes.
Thank you. Arjini Harris-Blenman, Colin Jakubczyk. Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Yeah, present. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Peter Crashes.
Yes.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Yes.
Thank you. William Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Fiora Ortiz Joyner.
Yes.
Thank you. Celeste Stern.
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole Tetreault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Thurton.
Yes.
Thank you. Ethel Tyus. Robert Witherwax, yes. Deborah Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to read it. And I do
No
apologize again.
problem. No one has had the same excuse. That's good. Did Miss Tyus leave? I guess so. Okay. Thank you. So the next with that, unlike the correspondence, which
Robert, I'm sorry.
no, Miss Young, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just see a note from Ethel. She said she was having problems with access, and she asked me to vote no for her. I'm sorry. I just saw that.
That's fine. That's fine. I will take the proxy vote under advisement. We generally don't since she was here, maybe I'll let it go. Fair enough. Let's see. This is going before the full board. The letters don't need to go before the full board. All right, third item for tonight. And again, appreciate the members who drafted and assisted in the drafting of all this. This was, again, a letter that we had envisioned to kind of go to our elected officials and talk about street safety and street uses and the various legislative and policy changes that we thought were worth looking at. And it's kind of grown. A lot of the members have thrown a lot of soup into this particular pot. So I'm not sure I want to put the letter before us tonight, but I do want to urge everyone to take a look at the last page of the the publication that I sent around, the memo that I sent around, right? So the letter says, "Dear elected official to whom it may concern, we urge you to support specific legislation." We reference the Safe Streets Act, which is currently being debated in Albany. We reference the bill for residential parking permits, and then we reference various street safety bills. That list has grown. Members have sent me intros that they think we should look at. And so it probably isn't something we want to vote on off the cuff, but it's probably something we want to take another month and look at those intros and come back and have a letter that's more targeted at our council persons, the three council persons who represent CB8, asking for their support for these items, some of whom already support them and some of whom don't. Then we had some comments directed at Mayor Adams, who has promised to install 300 miles of protected bike lane and 150 miles of bus lane, and the administration is not making the average yearly milestones. We asked the MTA to issue the bike, pedestrian, and micromobility strategic access plan to enable more people to access public transit. And we talked about e-bikes. They're an innovative addition to the city landscape, but they must be ridden on the street, not on sidewalks. Education and enforcement campaigns are needed. And then finally, we asked for support for specific infrastructure, speed and red light cameras, specifically along St. John's in New York, cameras as well as bus lane enforcement along Nostrand, and opening closed subway entrances. So it's, like I said, it's a big stew, and we're probably better served to pull things apart and make a couple different letters from this that we send. And even more than letters, some educational opportunities for the community, because there's a lot. There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 intros in the city council alone that we should have a deeper dive on before we say support this. So I'm going to ask that our streets subcommittee take a look at those, and then we'll come back and vote on it in our March meeting. Any objections to tabling that item for now?
I just think we should. Let's all review it and pay attention so that when we do come together next time, we're really coming with good points like we did with all the other stuff we did tonight.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gray. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Last item on the agenda is budget. So for those of us who are on the full board, this document might be familiar. This is the Register of Community Board budget requests for the fiscal year that is upcoming. So fiscal year 2024, which starts in July of 2023 and runs through June of 2024. So for those of you who are new to this, one of the annual exercises and frustration that we go through on the community board level is we devise budget requests, we submit them to the city agencies, and the city agencies come back to us in February with their comments on our budget requests. So again, by my tally, related to the topic of this committee, we had at least 7 capital requests and 10 or so expense requests. And I just wanted to go through them very briefly. One of the things we're going to try to do better as a board, I think, in the next round of this is have more targeted acquisitions, more targeted requests. So these are such things as provide new or increased number of sanitation trucks and other equipment, improve transit, traffic and pedestrian safety and traffic calming along the north side of Eastern Parkway, right? So we're asking for things to a certain degree that are already happening. But we're looking for continued support. Provide smaller brooms, mechanical brooms that would sweep areas where the big sweepers can't get to. Asking for, let's see, the sanitation garages, that a new community composting and education site be created, that 5 new drop-off locations be created, and they said that they can't address that. We asked for repairs or upgrades to specific the Franklin Avenue shuttle, and we asked for the southeast corner of St. Mark's and Nostrand and the northwest corner of Park and Nostrand to get new pedestrian ramps. We asked for an environmental performance study for NYCHA to see whether containerization is possible for their garbage. We asked for a lot of things along that. We asked for increased funding for the rodent epidemic. We asked for, again, containerization at NYCHA. We asked for a cleaning supervisor at the district office for Community District 8 sanitation. And we asked for additional traffic enforcement agents. We asked to clean catch basins. We asked for increased enforcement of canine waste laws. And we asked for expanding composting and expanded bus operations, hours of bus operations. And we asked for increased enforcement of alternate side regulations. And we asked for the restoration of the B-71. So we asked for a lot. The agency requests are routinely either, they're never no, but it's like, it's a non-answer answer. So one of the things we want to do this year is come up with another list like that, but a little more specific. I think the more specific we can get, the better. So general things like more funding for X goes a long way, but more specific things like study this intersection and improve the issues. Maybe that's not a budget request, so we need to do a little bit more learning. But I just wanted to bring this before the committee, because when we come back in March, that's certainly something we're going to talk about in earnest. We did it a low simmer last year, and I want to do it a little more engagedly this year. And so I really want you to think about, well, what in the community from any of the EST elements needs a budget request to support it? What programs need more funding? What funded programs need to be continued? What specific capital requests for rebuilding X, Y, or Z do we want to ask for? So like I said, it's an annual exercise in frustration. I want to make it a little more, little less frustrating. Any questions? I see some hands. Ms. Mohammed, then Ms. Gray, then Mr. Meehan.
That was a leftover hand. Sorry.
No problem. Karen?
Okay, one of the things I'd like to say is the MTA needs to keep that wireless service on the bus. Wireless service is not a privilege. It has been around for too long and it's too cheap. It's radio waves to take off the public transportation. That's ridiculous.
Great. That's a great element to add to all of this. Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Meehan?
Yeah, I think that we should set a target for a specific number of bus shelters. I think that we should target the, bus stops with the highest ridership for priority, but also those that are, next to senior facilities, because those are typically the people who need the seat the most. And I think that we should, I guess, figure out what the level of funding that DOT is willing to give us, and then try and figure out a number from there.
That's great. I think and you've also hit on some of the unknowns, right? We don't know how much money is at stake in a given agency. We don't know what the allocations are. We don't know the costs of the things we're asking for. We need some more facts to make this a worthwhile process. So those are great points. Ms. Granville?
Mr. Witherwax, it has really bothered me that since that Franklin Avenue station was open, I don't recall it ever being painted. And I'm trying to understand why it's such a problem to get it painted. And I believe at one point the Department of City Planning had asked us about what improvements we'd like to see to go along with the M Crown area. And I think that's something that needs to be done. I don't know. I don't think it should be highly expensive to paint one station. And I don't think it's unreasonable if it hasn't been done in the last 20 years. I was there when they reopened the station. So I really don't recall them painting it since that time.
So you're talking about the Park Place station or the Franklin
Place
Avenue
station? The
Yeah.
Park Place station, which is definitely in Community Board 8.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that I wanted to speak on. And the other thing I wanted to make you aware of, even though you may or may not know, some years ago, a manager at Transit told me that we're entitled to all of our bus statistics, all of our ridership information for all trains and all buses in the area, but we need to ask for it. So if we don't ask for it, we don't get it. So I think it's something that we need to let them know that we're intensely interested, not just when they're talking about cutting service and making changes, but we like to know all the time what our ridership is.
That's two good points. I will point out to your first one, capital budget item number 20 is exactly what you said. It's the Franklin Avenue shuttle line is in dire need of repainting. The 4 stops along the line, specifically the Park Place station, is in terrible repair with peeling paint and graffiti, both interior and exterior. Each year we are advised to contact, but we need the agency to understand the urgency. So yeah, It's one of our requests, and their answer is always more information is needed before making a funding decision. The community board should contact the agency. Which, what do you think we're doing? That's the point of this. We're contacting the agency. And that part of me says, well, okay, this is a city process and that's a state project. So maybe there's something there, but they ask us to do MTA and New York City transit related things through this process. So, it's not a good enough answer. But your point about bus ridership statistics being due to us is an excellent one. I'll speak with the board office and we'll follow up with that. Any other questions or comments?
One other thing I wanted to ask about. The block of Park Place between Classen and Franklin, I think it is, has those little steps that go down ever so often. There's like 8, I think 4 on each side of the street.
Yep.
And they actually were steps that you would take down to the street level, I guess, for people who wanted to park, or maybe, I don't know whether they ever used them for garbage purposes or not. But when they did the station, it seems like nobody thought about the fact that those steps need to be repaired. And I would think that if anybody tried to use those steps in their current condition, you might stand a chance of ending up on your back, because those things haven't been fixed in years. So I don't know what you call them, but I think that when city planning asked us for improvements for that particular area, that's something that should have been mentioned.
That's interesting. I don't know whether that would be because they're part of the sidewalk, right? So would that be something the city would do, or would that be something that the property owners would be responsible for? I just don't know. Those are great questions. We can
They're
look
right
into it.
next to where cars are parked, so I'm not sure if you could look at somebody and say those steps belong to their property. I'm not sure how that would work.
Me neither, but I know I can picture it exactly because I walk that way a lot. I know exactly what you're talking about. We'll figure it out. Ms. Tyus. Can't hear you, Ms. Tyus.
I'm sorry, I have to agree with Ms. Granville. The steps from the sidewalk to the roadway would be the city's responsibility, not that of the abutting property owner.
Okay. We can see where the city stands on that. And again, so that's the block of park. Is that inside the AAMUP footprint, or is that outside of the?
It is within the half-mile study area.
It's in the study area. Okay.
Half-mile study area, and it was mentioned by DCP as we went along. One thing I want to add that was never mentioned, when we have a heavy rain, there is a pool. This part there under the tracks, so they need a drain there.
Oh, but that's so much fun to bike through.
True.
You're funny.
Wet feet sometimes on days like today. Ms. Stern.
I've noticed that a lot of our crosswalks and the markings on Eastern Parkway to separate pedestrians from cyclists have worn away. And I wondered if this would be a good specific ask to have the crosswalks, DOT really do those again and paint Eastern Parkway as well.
So crosswalks specifically on Eastern Park, or just in general, right? District-wide?
In general, district-wide, I'd say.
So that type of routine maintenance allegedly happens on a cycle. But if we see spots where it's definitely faded, that's exactly what the board office can work on, because they don't, there's just roving crews that deal with this. So that makes sense. But yeah, I will add that into the list. I thought I saw another hand for a moment.
Me hand?
My hand is down.
Oh, I guess I accidentally double clicked. I wanted to add I think this would probably go with, I was going to say something about the composting, but I think instead I'll mention we have a lot of places in the district where DOT has painted sidewalk extensions. And I think it might be a good budget ask to ask for DDC to come in and fill those in concrete. Alternatively, we could ask, I know DOT is doing a raised crosswalk program, and I haven't seen any of those in our district as far as I'm aware, but I think that would be a great thing, especially for Eastern Parkway, where drivers tend to go a bit faster and where, you know, we've got this very nice continuous path, stuff like that.
So to the sidewalk extensions, the DDC, that's definitely going to be on the capital side of the ledger. Once you start talking concrete, you're talking capital, but absolutely, if you've got specific corners in mind, we'll put a list together, because again, I think that kind of granular ask is what they're looking for. To the raised crosswalk, that's something I know we've discussed with our friends at Borough DOT, and I can't remember where the current status is. I've seen one in Washington Heights. I've not seen any closer to us ever, but yeah, we can ask and see whether that is a budget request or whether it's something lower. We'll figure it out. All right, any other things? Again, this is the first iteration of what's going to be at least a 2 or 3 meeting conversation to put these budget requests together. But anything else?
I was just thinking that, for example, on Prospect Place, between Bedford and it's Franklin? The block, there's a block where there's a Seventh-day Adventist church along that block, and there was a daycare center. From time to time, that whole street seems to sink in, and they have to come and they put some asphalt. Whoever those utility companies that come and dig, they need to have some kind of thing where they maintain that and put it back properly, because that is a danger to motorists and to people walking, pedestrians and cyclists. And it happens on several streets, because that lady that just got killed on 21st Street in East Flatbush, that was one of the problems. She was crossing the street, and the depression in the street, she fell and the car hit her.
Ooh.
So that particular block, it happens maybe twice a year. The whole thing sinks in. So we have to maintain our streets properly to avoid the accidents that we could prevent.
And that was Prospect and Franklin, you think?
Prospect between Bedford, what's the one coming down Prospect? It is the next one is Franklin, I think it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm picturing that block, and I just can't picture the depression. But that's why we have multiple eyes on the street. This is good. One of the longer term projects that we talk about a lot and we've never actually done is a district-wide map. And our spreadsheet that we kind of keep track of these things on, which again, we're still trying to get up and rolling, is meant to track these types of things. Like where do we spot the issues? Mark them on the spreadsheet, pin them on a map, and then we need to bang on the doors of the people who take care of this and make sure it gets addressed. Great. Any other comments for tonight? Any new business for tonight?
I have something.
Yeah, as do I. I'll wait my turn.
I'll wait. You go ahead, Theo. You spoke up first.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Witherwax, I just wanted to say that in attending last Thursday's AMUP meeting, which we had a few committee members, including our chair, Mr. Witherwax, and some board members attend, it really opened up my eyes as to, I already knew there was a lot going on in the district, but how much is coming down. And I think that the residents of Community Board 8 should have an opportunity to know what's going on. And I think that having EST meetings on a more consistent basis would provide more community members and residents to be part of EST and be aware of what else is going on. And I would like to, and trust me, I needed to attend another meeting like I need a hole in my head. But I think that we need to consider having these meetings on a monthly basis.
Sure. When I first started chairing this committee, and I don't know how many people are still on from when Dr. Monderson chaired, I followed his schedule. He always sort of took us off in November and December, and at least once in the spring. And I kept to that because it was the rhythm of the committee. And there's some good and there's some bad to it. But I think we've got enough going on, especially since we're now environment, sanitation, and transportation, that you're exactly right. There's enough agenda to fill. Now, I agree with you. I need another meeting. We need an 8th day in the week to fit all the meetings. But as long as there's something to accomplish at a given meeting, I got no problem with it. If we're just meeting for the sake of meeting, we can probably use our time better. But I agree with you that there's probably enough, if we really plan it out and map it out, that we can, there's no reason not to meet the 10 times a year that we need to meet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
Yes, a couple of things. I want to know if there's any governance, any controls over the Revel bikes. We've been noticing on our block and around the corner that it seems like we've become the drop-off spot for the Revel motorbikes. Sometimes there could be up to 5 bikes just sitting, I guess, waiting to be picked up. And I'm just curious about that. The truck will come and drop them off, and they'll sit there, of course, taking up parking spaces. But I wanted to know if anyone is familiar with any governance around if that should be happening or have any information. So that's one question that I wanted to pose. The other is that I know that we're moving towards new protocols around garbage cans and when we can put our garbage cans and the requirement of garbage can lids. Now, I certainly want to do everything I can to abate the rodent problem we have. But I also don't want to be continuously digging in my pocket because my garbage can top has been thrown somewhere or broken up. I can't tell you how many that I've replaced, and that's why I moved to taking off the tops because they either get broken from sanitation or they just disappear. So I'm very concerned about that. And I know there was a discussion about getting a garbage can where the top is chained, but that too could be an additional financial cost to us because when they pick them up to dump the garbage, they can be broken. So and last thing I want to raise is the issue around the loading docks, the loading stations, the loading zones, whatever they're called, where they believe that by installing these loading zones that the Amazons and the UPS trucks are going to park in them. I have a big concern that that's not going to happen because I watch daily open spots and those trucks do not park as it is where there's an open spot. So they block up traffic because they will double park even if there's a space for them to pull into. So I threw out 3 things. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I want to take them in reverse order, then return to
That's
something
fine.
Ms. Ortiz Joyner said, and then I see you, Mr. Crashes. Loading zones, that's a great question. We can ask about DOT what the metrics are for success. Are they being enforced? What's going on here? That's a great question to send to our borough rep. New cans with tops. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Mhm.
They don't even lift my can, right? They come by and they pull the garbage out of the can, which drives me nuts because inevitably somebody's left a small bag full of what in my garbage can.
Mhm.
And that never gets taken until I reach in and deal with it. I don't know how this is going to work.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me. And so I'm hoping that there is an answer. I suspect there isn't. But I think that's something we can reach out to sanitation and say, look, what's the plan? And I think Ms. Cunningham kind of alluded to it when she came to the full board, but she didn't get into the details of it. But I think they do have some kind of program in mind, hands and lids with that. To the Revel, I don't have an answer for you on the Revel drop-offs. I don't think that there's any system or governance. I think it's a private company, just like any other car share company that used to, remember Zipcar or Smart Car, that would be all over the place. But we can ask and see if DOT has an answer to that.
Thank you.
So 3 I don't knows, but I'm with you on all 3 of them.
Thank you.
Ms. Ortiz-Joyner, you mentioned something at the top of your comment, which I did want to come back to. You mentioned the MUP meeting. And yeah, I was there. I had to leave a little early, so I didn't get to stick around for the roundup of it, but I know you were there. Ms. Muhammad was there. Mr. Crashes was there. Ms. Saskia was there. Sharon Wedderburn was there. A bunch of other of us were there. It was my first meeting. I hadn't gone to any of the other ones. I thought it was an interesting exercise. But again, I missed the wrap up, so I didn't get the full of it. But you're exactly right that there's a lot going on with that program, and we should be plugged in. And I'm pleased to say that the committee, I think, is well represented in what I've seen so far for the turnout for the MUP stuff. We've got committee members who are on and board members who are on. Oh, Ms. Tyus too is on the steering committee. So hopefully our voices on that will be heard. But you mentioned AMUP, and I just wanted to not let it not go unmentioned. So thank you for mentioning that. Mr. Crashes and then Mr. Thurton.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to second your suggestion that we meet monthly. I think there's an enormous amount always to cover. And even if there isn't an action item or something, it still makes sense to discuss those, a pretty wide range of stuff to organize and talk about. And then in terms of the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan, again, also just to back that up, there's a large area of center part of the project moving, which is in North Crown Heights, which and keeping in mind that the boundaries of the study area extend about half a mile from where the actual rezoning occurs. They're looking at opportunities for public realm improvements, and the area in the area, the kind of the circle at the center of the project site and extending out is underserved when it comes to public realm services in the public realm. So everybody should try to key into this project at certain points in this plan at certain points and give their input, because this is one of the opportunities we've got to draw focus to those areas that aren't getting the focus that they need.
And just to second that, I'm thrilled that what has been a really interesting zoning project has added on a few other layers, and now is a possible transportation and public realm improvement project as well for, as you say, a vitally underserved part of Brooklyn and of our district. Just the lack of street tree map and the distance from a playground or public park map really brings home the fact that this is a part of the neighborhood that it's not just housing, not just the M1, but other district-wide improvements, if we shepherd this properly, can be brought in for the benefit of everyone. Mr. Thurton, and then I see Ms. Ortiz-Joyner, your hand is up again or still. So either way. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Whitterwack. Yeah, with the city bikes, we have in the Crown Heights area, we have several stations that they installed city bikes a few months ago. The problem is that there's 1 or 2 bikes at these stations. Do they have a plan, or is it that they're planning on continuing in this manner, where the stations could take about 15, 20 bikes and there's only 1 or 2 bikes in there? I mean, I have a concern also. The quality of the bikes that I've used is that I'm they were kind of unsafe. So are they, I mean, we can ask them, what are they looking to do in reference to increase the amount of the bikes in the stations, or if they're not going to be utilizing it, then, you know, see how they can, you know, if a station is not needed, can it be moved someplace or to be removed?
Sure. So again, we got to keep eyes on it all and watch it. I'm looking at the map right now, and no surprise, the two stations on Howard Avenue, which is off to the east of everything, have like 18 and 20 bikes at them right now. And yeah, because that's at the edge, the periphery of everything. The bike stations down around Lincoln Terrace have 11 bikes, 7 bikes, 12 bikes. But you go into Central Crown Heights and you've got 0 bikes in a lot of them right now. That's just a function of the fact that people ride them as far as they can go, park them, and walk. And it's probably going to be reversed in the morning, right? You'll see all those stations that have all those bikes now, they'll all get taken and used. So the city needs, well, not the city bike needs to do a better job of rebalancing. But let's be specific. If you spot specific stops, specific stations that are out of balance chronically, report it. I think it is a fine tune. It is a question of being fine tuned. And maybe if a dock is too big, they will, I know historically they have changed it. Fior, did you have another question you wanted to make?
I just wanted to add to something that Ms. Young had said earlier in reference to the loading zone. Having one installed on my block last week. Again, I also asked the FedEx driver, was he aware that there was a loading dock there? He wasn't. So when I told him there was, and I said, will you use it? He told me no, because if he had a delivery, if he had a delivery on the east side of the block, he wasn't going to park on the west side to walk. Okay. And then secondly, the fact that the loading zones are 7 to 7 and the other signs are 8:30, you have to move your car at 8:30. Why can't the loading zone start at 8:30 as opposed to 7? I don't think that there was any deliveries going on at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I think they're also meant for businesses. So like a business that might be getting a delivery, like a grocery store or something.
This is a residential block.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. We'll ask and see if there's a rule. But thank you. Gail Branch Mohammed.
Yes, Rob, I just wanted to piggyback on what was said about the Atlantic Avenue project. And it was my first time also, and I'm glad to see that there was such a great representation from Community Board 8. I think it's important that people are aware that the next meeting is going to be on March 12th. And I don't think they have indicated exactly where it was going to take place. But I think that as many people as possible should come out and be a part of the planning.
Do any of our steering committee members know about the venue for the March meeting?
Sorry, I don't have that information for you.
I thought it was going to be online, Gail, but I'm not sure.
Are we still talking about the AIM up? Sorry, I zoned out.
Yeah.
It's going to be in person.
Oh, it is the March meeting.
Sunday afternoon, I think.
Yes, March 12th at 2. Well, it starts at 2 o'clock on March 12th, if I'm not mistaken.
William, do you know the venue? Where is it going to be?
They were still trying to nail down a venue.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and this is all being done.
My point is, we need to promote it as much as possible to remind others. There might be other board members that want to join.
Can we put it in the community board calendar?
We can ask the board office.
Great idea.
It's a little above my pay grade, so I'll pass that on to Irsa.
And I'll add residents to that too. People don't have to be committee members or board members to attend.
Anything else? So thank you very very productive meeting. We passed 2 items, one of which will go before the full board. We've got a good start on our budget items for the next fiscal year. We've got some new business out there, lots of great questions percolating. We're going to try to meet more frequently, but to the point I made before in response to that is I'm fine meeting as long as we have an agenda and something to accomplish that needs to be accomplished by a group, because I think a lot of the work that went into what we voted on tonight happened outside of meetings, happened by email chains back and forth, happened with Google Docs, happened with people working when they could, not at a 6:30 on a Tuesday night because they have to, right? So let's not forget that leg of the stool. We've got a lot of ideas here, but a lot of the labor that can move them forward has to happen outside of a committee meeting. So I just don't want that to get lost as we go forward, right? Meeting is great, meeting is fine, meeting is wonderful. We throw things on the board, but if we leave them on the board, the meeting really didn't help us. We have to do something with what we throw up on the board. Okay, so any other final comments?
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, chat. We have a chat? Oh, there's a few questions in the chat. I thought the chat was disabled. Okay. Is it possible to get a copy? Yes, May, we'll send that along. Reverend Dr. Bronco H. Crook, why do we need a loading zone on our block when there are 4 fire hydrants, a bus stop, and 4 driveways? Well, you can't park in a fire hydrant, you can't park in a bus stop, and you shouldn't park in somebody's driveway. And that's probably why you got a loading zone. Good question. I don't mean to be flip. I don't know what block you're talking about, but that's those things don't get counted as something that you can double park in. Let's see. Any other questions?
William, me, and not a question so much as I think a large part of why the trucks end up double parking is because of the stipulated fine program. So the truck delivery companies don't actually pay per infraction. They just pay like a negotiated rate every year. So we might want to draft a letter asking the city to repeal that stipulated fine program to encourage the drivers to park in legal parking or loading spaces.
Great. No, I think that's a good angle of attack on it. Okay. All right. As usual, we'll put the minutes together and circulate them. Oh, Mark, I see your hand.
I wasn't aware of this loading parking. I mean, it's a residential area. Why do they need a loading area and a residential block anyway? Because whenever I see all of them, they stop at the beginning of the block, quarter of the block, the next third quarter, and the end of the block to make deliveries. I don't see them stopping at a location and walking long distances. I mean, I really don't see the logic on that in residential blocks, except maybe to make it harder for the residential drivers. I mean, is there a way that this can be protested?
I think we need to learn a little bit more about the we need to learn a little more about the logic that goes into the site selection. I didn't know about this. Dr. Crook has said that it's Bergen Street between Brooklyn and New York. So we need to figure out how are they being selected and under what program. I will say that on the next block over for me, Park Place, the one that's being done, it's totally closed off most of the day. You see Amazon workers with giant backpacks on making deliveries, FedEx workers with giant backpacks making deliveries up and down the block. It's totally feasible. They don't have to drive 3 houses and then make their deliveries. They choose to do so, and they need to change, I think. But we'll find some angles to make that work for everybody. Great. Any final comments? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any opposition?
No other
None.
Great. Hearing none, I want to thank everybody for their time tonight. And we will, again, the minutes will go out in the next week or so, and we'll re-adjourn in March. 4th Tuesday in March this time. 4th Tuesday, I promise. Thank you for accommodating my stupidity. We'll see everyone at the March meeting. Thank you all.
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.